So I went to this fast food place, Zuma stated, and they had 2 openings to throw the trash into. One for garbage and the other for recycling. Hours earlier, a massive tragedy had occurred. Rubble's agonizing scream could be heard all across the lookout, and it became known just what happened as everyone picked up their heads in surprise. They were out of pup treats. Now, Zuma, Rocky, and Marshall were on the most important mission of all, going to the store. The 3 dogs were casually walking by themselves down the sidewalk. It was nice to get away from the tower every once in a while. They could only take Chase's attitudes for so long, and Marshall himself needed a breather from all the chaos that had been going on. "That's great!" Rocky chirped, hopping a little. "It's so nice to know that other places practice going green." "But both went to the same trash bin," the lab finished. "It literally didn't matter." Marshall could be heard barely holding in a laugh. Rocky snapped his head to his partner, eyes widened in shock. "What? Why would anyone do that?" "I don't know. Customer appeal?" shrugged the brown lab. "A lot of places and companies like to make it look like they support or do something just for customer appreciation," Marshall explained. "It's funny. You think they care, and they say they care, but they don't." The mixed breed stared with a bewildered expression, like his entire life's purpose had been shattered in 4 seconds. It was almost humorous how Rocky was near obsessed with what he called the quote-unquote green movement, happily separating trash for recycling and making use of discarded items. Everyone knew he was pure-hearted for thinking such, but one dog in green wasn't exactly going to change the world. "Rocky, you are about to— Oh!" The mix suddenly slammed into a stop sign, as he was too distracted from Zuma's statement to watch the path before him. He stumbled backward from the impact, wobbling for a second before hitting the pavement. Marshall couldn't hold in his laughter anymore, as he let out a massive wheeze, followed by an assault of giggles and laughing. "You're turning into me!" Zuma rolled his eyes and smiled softly, moving to help him up. "You okay?" "I want to find that restaurant," Rocky growled in determination. "What?" "I said I want to find that place and rip them a new one!" The mix snarled, accepting Zuma's paw as he was pulled back up. "I'll save you tweets for when you come back," the lab giggled in amusement. "I'm serious!" "Didn't say you won't." Rocky grumbled to himself as they rounded a sidewalk corner. The shopping plaza was just a little ways away. As dogs, walks were always good for the soul, and some much-needed exercise was all Zuma needed to call it a day. At most, he was just amused at Rocky's blind confidence. It was entertaining to see his close friend get worked up over little things and then swear to change the world. Rocky himself didn't feel the same way. As far as he knew, he had a heart as large as a Great Dane, and he could conquer anything if he really tried. "One day, Zuma," Rocky sighed. "One day you'll see how much I can really do." "Don't let Chase hear you say that," pointed the Dalmatian. "He'll give you one of his looks." The lab smiled warmly. "Well, try to take it easy before that day happens. Now let's get these tweets before Wubble whips down the entire lookout." "You ever want to get that speech impediment taken care of?" Rocky offered. The lab instantly turned his head away with a stubborn look. "No." Now it was Rocky's turn to laugh. It was always fun to poke Zuma for the one thing he hated. He seemed to be one dog spared from an immediate pillow to the face whenever they mentioned Zuma's impediment. Rocky didn't question why he got special treatment like that, but he wouldn't complain anytime soon. They continued bickering as they walked, ranting about small topics that were utterly meaningless in the greater scope of things. They soon rounded another corner, and both dogs stopped in their tracks at the sight before them. Huh? Rocky recoiled. What are they doing? Down the street up ahead, multiple roadblocks had been set up, completely barricading off the main part of a town. Dark vehicles were parked behind it, seemingly acting as another wall to ensure nothing crossed the line. Marshall halted in his steps, almost shrinking down in size as he moved backward. Rocky took a step back when he recognized two dogs watching over the structure. Standing at the sidelines were armored dogs identical to the one scarred into the mixed breed's head. No! The mix stumbled back, starting to run with fear in his eyes. Rocky, wait! Zuma tried to say, but his friend had already fled several feet away. I'll find him. Marshall turned, following Rocky. Narrowing his eyes, the lab slowly approached the border. The armored dog had already noticed him a long time ago, and was not taking his eyes away as Zuma cautiously walked up.
Leave, Labrador!
The guard called out to him.
This section of town is closed!
Closed? Zuma repeated, confusion in his eyes. How can it be closed like that?
Because we say so!
Barked the large dog.
Now leave before you're detained!
Befuddled as he was, the lab decided he liked his life and quickly turned away, leaving the scene. He eventually found Rocky hiding under a park bench a few seconds later, shaking like a leaf. Marshall was actually sitting on the bench above him, looking deep in thought as he waited for the lab to return. Concern washed over Zuma as he tried to speak a few words to his recycle friend, but with no response. Rocky was barely recovering from his own interactions with the ACG and needed to be escorted home. Zuma would ensure Rocky would see safety, but not before turning to Marshall. Tell Chase and Wida. The Dalmatian nodded and spoke into his pup tag. Chase? He asked, contacting his close friend first.
What is it?
Came a rather tired-sounding voice. Come to the city park as fast as you can, Marshall said fearfully. Seriously, you need to hurry! It's those dogs again! He ended the call and quickly contacted Ryder. It was moments like this that reminded Chase he hadn't slept in a seriously long time. After talking with an awfully unhelpful dog at the cafe, all he wanted to do was collapse on his bed and dream of pup treats. But he couldn't sleep now. Now he was running down the sidewalk through the town, his bed miles away. Chase didn't want to admit there were moments where he hated being in charge of everything. It was one thing for the ACG soldiers to impede on their missions, but it was a whole other thing for them to hurt his friends, and it was an entirely different ballpark for them to interfere with the city. He was growing sick of these dogs. He didn't know where they came from or what they wanted. All they were doing now was harm. It didn't take long for him to find the roadblocks. It wasn't even the one Zuma had walked up to. The border had already cut through the city and divided out a large portion of the shopping districts. Taking careful steps, he observed the gates that had been built and spotted people on the other side trying to cross through it. Every time, an armored dog either talked them away or maced the person right in the eyes. Chase winced as a man, blinded from the spray, was helplessly dragged off to an undisclosed location. Spotting two dogs guarding the gates, Chase took a deep breath and wandered closer.
Hey!
The guard spotted the shepherd through his goggles.
Back off!
What's going on? Chase asked. Where did they take that man?
I said back off, puppy!
The armored animal retorted. Hey, I'm the police division here, the shepherd argued. I have the right to know.
You? Police?
The tactical dog tilted his head.
You are insane.
No, I'm...
Hey, Gavin!
The dog suddenly turned, calling to someone a few feet away.
Check out this puppy! He says he's a police officer!
Chase flattened his ears in mild embarrassment, letting his head lower a little as a second, shorter dog ran up the gate.
No way, seriously?
They bellowed.
That little thing?
I'm with the Paw Patrol, he tried to explain. His own tail started to dart under him.
Ooh, I'm so scared,
chuckled the ACG dog.
The Paw Patrol, essentially a bunch of orphaned puppies playing dress-up.
Chase nearly growled. I'm not here to be made fun of. I want to know why you're closing down the city. The two guards shared a brief laugh before turning back to the puppy.
Look, kid, even if you are a real police officer, we can't fly that info to just anyone. You registered in CAP?
The what? The police dog tilted his head.
The Civilian Assistance Program,
the guard explained.
Your friends and neighbors applied to assist us in our operations in exchange for money or protection. If you want to know anything, you need to be cleared to help us first.
Chase picked his ears up, thinking over the new information. How do I apply?
Well, first of all,
the shorter guard chuckled.
I think you need to have hit puberty first. So...
They both laughed again. I've hit puberty. Chase trailed off, lowering his head once again.
Look,
a guard laughed off.
Go find the tent in front of City Hall. You can get interviewed there. But don't hold your breath.
Narrowing his eyes at the bullies, Chase sharply turned and ran off, both guards still laughing behind him. His teeth clenched as he tried to simmer down the rage that boiled within him. No one took him seriously. He was a fully fledged member of law enforcement, and all anyone ever did was laugh at him. Sure, he was tiny compared to the ACG soldiers, but he had the right to be recognized for what he was. It was no matter. He had a real lead to use now. All he had to do was pass a simple interview, and all true intentions would hopefully be revealed. Chase? Ryder's voice came on through his tag. Doing some field work, sir, he reported. I have a lead on the ACG. Wait, really? They have a tent at City Hall where I can apply for CAP, Chase explained. I should be able to... Chase, I'm going to stop you right there. Whatever you're planning on doing, stop it. The police dog hit the brakes, coming to a stop with a surprised expression. What? Why? I don't want you getting in the middle of the ACG, Ryder explained sternly. Those dogs are military extremists. I'm not going to have you get roped in. But sir, I really have something here, Chase protested. I have the right to know what's going on. It's not happening, Chase. Get back here, and that's an order! Ryder finished, slightly raising his voice at the end. Anger and confusion rose within the shepherd. Why was everything being torn from him? It wasn't fair. Right when he had something, Ryder stepped in and slapped it out of his paws. What was Ryder getting so worked up about anyway? Chase was a police officer, and officers knew how to handle themselves. His anger quickly turned to determination, and his mind began churning an idea. Yes, sir, he replied. I'll head back. All right, then. Once Ryder went offline, Chase grinned to himself. He'd listen to him, for now. He had his own plans, his own tasks to complete. All he needed now was for his friends to stay out of the way and get clear. Regardless of what Ryder said, he was going to City Hall, and he was going to get answers on the ACG, no matter how far into the lion's den he'd have to go. The lookout was filled with colorful stage lights as the music echoed out, barely contained by the glass windows. A sharp beat could be heard from the outside clearing, then met with a chorus of rhythm and melodies. It was the perfect afternoon for Pup Pup Boogie, and they celebrated the momentous occasion by cranking the volume up severely higher than usual. Chase returned sometime later, tiredly trudging up the sidewalk as his tail dragged on the ground. Once the muffled rave music hit his ears, an audible groan escaped his lips as he looked up at the tower. Sure enough, brightly colored lights were blaring out, turning the lookout into somewhat of a massive disco ball. Ugh, seriously now? Chase groaned to himself. All the world was in chaos, and his friends were having dance parties. Upstairs, the entire room was bursting with deafening disco music. Rubble was dancing on his own a little ways off, not participating in the actual video game. He wasn't relatively a great dancer, but that never bothered him. Everyone was always happy to see the bulldog be himself. Zuma and Marshall were the players, dancing away on the platforms as if their lives depended on it. They were moving in all directions, moving their bodies as if the very rhythm flowed through them. The scores were close, maintaining near equal numbers as the song continued. But there could only be one winner, and both dogs were fighting tooth and nail for the trophy. Rocky was sitting, mesmerized by how any dog could possibly move in such ways. Sky was sitting next to the mix, cheering on the duo as they moved. She could only watch, as her cough had slightly worsened, and would surely break her down from an explosive movement. The middle elevator opened, and Chase grimaced as the music hit him full force. No one had seen or heard him enter the main floor. The sheer volume of the game was overbearing. Flattening his ears in annoyance, he walked up next to Rocky. The mix was gleefully bouncing to the beat, and turned to smile at his shepherd friend, expecting him to return the happy look. Chase merely raised an eyebrow, unhappy his mission to City Hall was aborted.
Are you gonna play?
Rocky asked excitedly, having to bark over the music.
No! Where's Ryder?
The shepherd retorted.
What?
The mix cocked his head.
I said, where's Ryder?
Chase shouted over the deafening disco.
Outside, working on his ATV!
Rocky pointed back to the windows. The shepherd loudly groaned, sharply turning back to the elevator. Rocky frowned at his friend's actions, wanting to call him back and invite him to a dance-off. Chase re-entered the elevator and hit the button. The doors swiftly shut, slightly muffling the music, then increasingly quieted it as he moved downward. Chase decided he'd rather not go deaf today and took a second to lick his paw. Arriving outside, Chase left the elevator and walked around to the garage. The smell of motor oil hit his nose as he walked onto the pavement, coming up to Ryder.
I thought you were joining the party upstairs,
he commented, wedging a screwdriver under his vehicle. I'm not feeling it tonight. Chase sat down.
I don't get how they can cut loose like that when the ACG is tearing the city into pieces.
Well, sometimes you gotta take a breather, Ryder shrugged, wiping his forehead. It's unhealthy to not take breaks every once in a while.
But those dogs are...
Yes, I'm aware of what they're doing. The boy raised an eyebrow at the dog.
Why are you still on this? All we have to do is stay out of their way, and they'll eventually leave. As a police dog, I feel responsible for keeping my city safe, and it's not your city, Chase.
The shepherd hung his head, huffing in quiet agitation.
I know, it's just... I don't know why we're not doing anything about them.
We are, but it's not you doing it. Ryder pushed himself out from under the ATV, getting up. Chase tilted his head in confusion. Tonight I'm leaving for the mountains, he explained, cleaning off his tools.
Leaving?
Chase jolted.
Now? Why?
Just for a few days. I'm going to try and get the ACG out the old-fashioned way, Ryder explained. Me and Everest will go over some legal papers and see if we can bend a rule or something to get them out.
Why can't Everest come here?
Don't ask questions, Chase. Just do as you're told.
Ryder told him sternly. "While I'm gone, you're in charge. Call me if Sky's sickness gets worse." Chase was severely taken off guard, nearly barreled over by the sudden reveal that Ryder was going to completely leave in the night. He opened his mouth to say something, but decided to shut it for fear of angering his owner. He'd follow the orders, all good dogs did. Yet something was pulling at the back of his mind. There was something that Ryder wasn't telling him, and he knew it. He knew better than to challenge the boy, however, and the shepherd merely nodded in acceptance. Ryder would be leaving, and Chase was in charge. Nightfall shrouded over the lookout. The agonizing music was still emitting from the lookout. Chase poked his head out of his kennel in irritation, pleading for a power outage to fry the game. The only time the party stopped was when Ryder went up there to announce his departure. While it was mostly met with surprised exclaims, most of the pups were understanding. Chase didn't share their initial thoughts, as he couldn't help narrowing his eyes as he watched Ryder speed away on his ATV into the night. A lingering feeling was bleeding into what felt like abandonment. Surely Ryder couldn't just leave in the middle of all this. It didn't matter right now. The police dog had other things to attend to, and without his owner getting in the way, he could complete his own mission. Surely all of the others were distracted with their games, so none of them should get in his way either. Taking a deep breath, Chase stepped out of his kennel into the night. His mind fired off a quick way to speed to City Hall, preferably one that minimized attention on himself. He considered taking his rig, as that would be the faster option, but it would certainly draw some prying eyes. Chase frowned, wondering if taking one of the other pups' rigs was a better option, then realized he didn't know how to drive them. He was forced to settle on his own vehicle, but had to drive with lights and sirens off. It was the only option. Throwing on a dark jacket in an attempt to conceal his identity, Chase hopped in his rig and started the engine. The drive into the city was anxiety-filled, paranoia creeping up the shepherd's back as he neared City Hall. Did he really know what he was doing? Was this a smart idea, to go behind Ryder's back? Could he still turn around and go back on it all? If he had the option to leave, why wasn't he taking it? He finally parked his rig on the side of the road, turning off the engine and hopping out. He had arrived at the tall government building that was City Hall. It was almost intimidating, being a small puppy on the sidewalk approaching such a structure. "Here goes nothing," Chase gulped. The overhead road lights illuminated the courtyard before him. A small tent, dark blue in color, sat idly before the main doors. Underneath it was a white foldable table with some papers on it. A rather tired-looking husky sat with his chin resting on the table, seemingly nodding off. Chase approached the table, despite it towering over his small height. He gently cleared his throat, and the husky's eyes snapped open. "Huh?" He picked his head up, looking out in confusion. "Down here." The dog leaned forward over the table, finally spotting the small police dog sitting before him. The husky instantly gave a sour expression. "What do you want?" "Is this where I apply for CAP?" Chase looked up at him. The older dog held a surprised expression for a solid second, then stuttered for a moment before looking down at the papers. "Are you serious?" "Yes," the puppy said flatly. "Well, I'll tell you now. We don't accept puppies," growled the husky. "Shouldn't you be in bed?" "I'm not just a puppy." Chase narrowed his eyes, standing up on his back legs and placing his forearms on the table. "I'm from the Paw Patrol division. We practically run the city." "Oh, it's you six." The older dog rolled his eyes. "Honestly, it's goddamned hilarious that this city has to rely on a team of puppies." "Maybe so, But I'm still law enforcement, the police dog argued, and I want in. I told you, we don't accept puppies. But I'm not just a puppy. I have the right to know what's going on. The husky glanced to the side. Kid, I don't really know what to do here, he shrugged. Paw Patrol or not, we don't take puppies. I'm not taking no for an answer. The shepherd flattened his ears. Those words will get you tased. Look, is there a supervisor I can talk to? Chase submitted, slightly flexing his dull claws on the table. The husky raised an eyebrow, then rolled his eyes. You're gonna play that card, huh? Fine. He reached a paw to his chest and revealed a collar that was partially hidden from his fur. Chase immediately recognized it as a tag with a radio, just like his pup tag. Captain, sir, we have a situation out here, he spoke into it. Chase returned to all fours, satisfied he was making progress, slightly wagging his tail. After enduring a few more seconds of the dog's hostility, Chase turned his head as the city hall's door swung open, and out walked a dog that made him stop in his tracks. Up until now, he was feeling confident in his ability to see this until the end. But now all he wanted to do was run home. His confidence completely died as the second dog walked out, brimming with authority, and Chase recognized the Belgian Malinois instantly as the exact dog who intercepted their last mission. Cyrus walked out with a stern face and tending some nagging sheepdog ready to throw obscenities in the air. He was instead met with a small puppy, and his eyes widened in surprise. You? The Malinois muttered, semi-taking a step back. Yeah, Chase breathed. Me again. I thought I told you to stop getting involved, Cyrus growled, baring his sharpened fangs. I'm not! Chase fired back defensively, then hesitated. Well, yes, I am, but I'm not intruding like last time. What? Cyrus shook his head, not believing the small puppy would even dare to overstep this far. You're intruding now just as much as you were the other day. Well, I need to be in the loop somehow. The police dog took a step forward. So, I'm here, applying for CAP. Ugh. Cyrus deflated slightly. Come inside, not out here. Feeling uncertain of himself, but still holding on to his flickers of determination, Chase nodded as Cyrus turned around and headed inside the building. Following behind him, the puppy felt a chill creep up his spine. Just how deep into the rabbit hole had he fallen? The Malinois pushed open the glass doors and quickly walked through the lobby and down a hobby. They passed the front desk with the simple potted plants that dotted its edges, passing under the ceiling banner that bore the emblem of Adventure Bay. As Chase walked behind the larger dog, his mind went wild with the new territory he was staying in. He had 1,000 questions and became increasingly annoyed the longer they went unanswered. Cyrus opened a door off to the side, leading to a small room with nothing but a table and 2 chairs. It resembled a place where you'd interview new employees or interrogate a captive. On the table was a closed folder. Sit, Cyrus ordered, walking in. Chase instinctively lowered his rear to the floor and sat with a straight and firm posture, tilting his head slightly upward. In the chair, the Malinois said, exasperated. Oh, right, Chase tried to laugh off. Sorry, I'm used to doing that stuff for, treats, you know. He chuckled nervously as he climbed into the firm plastic chair. Cyrus raised an eyebrow. Are you absolutely sure you want a part in this? He questioned, sitting across from the puppy. Because once you get in the loop, you can't come out. Of course, the shepherd nodded eagerly. When I became a police dog, they told me it was the next step in life. No. Cyrus cut him off. This is nothing like that. You'll be under a confidential agreement. No one can know of your involvement, or you'll face repercussions. Chase frowned, drooping his ears. Why not? Because. Cyrus leaned in slightly, trying to drive home a point. The things that the ACG does and deals with are nothing like you've ever seen. It's more serious. We see things that will not hesitate to kill you or others. Chase's expression changed, his frown slowly turning to mild shock. And the reason we're here in Adventure Bay, he hesitated for a moment. Trust me, you'll be better off not knowing. He placed his paws on the table, leaning in slightly. Chase, I beg of you, just go home. This is not something a puppy should be roped into. The shepherd thought for a long moment, then proudly puffed out his chest. Chase is on the case, he said with a smile. But are you? Cyrus questioned. You say you're a police dog? Top of my class. What class? Well, mostly writers' programs, Chase confessed, glancing to the side. So you're not a cop. Cyrus narrowed his eyes. I am, the puppy shot forward. He struggled to find the words. I've just never really seen action in Adventure Bay like the things you see on TV. The two dogs sat in silence for a brief moment before Cyrus spoke again. Do you have a gun? Chase shuffled his paws uncomfortably. Yes, I do. I never see it on you. Is it in your pup pack? No, it's actually in a storage crate back at home, the puppy explained. I have a large bunker where I keep most of my gear, mainly the ones I've never needed before. Like? Cyrus pushed. Mostly riot gear, Chase shrugged. I think I even have tear gas, but I've never needed any of it, so it just all stays in there. Yeah, I noticed this city doesn't see much action to begin with, nodded the Malinois. It's usually just cats and trees and lost mail. I imagine our presence has been quite abrupt. It has, Chase frowned. If I can be honest, I really don't like what you're doing to the city. Oh? The older dog tilted his head. I don't. And maybe if you told me why you're here and your reasons for such, maybe I'd understand and even want to help. Is a criminal on the loose or something? No, Chase. It's so much more than that, Cyrus pressed. Then just tell me! Are you sure? He growled in response. Are you 100% sure you want to sign the papers, see shit that will scar you for life, and never be able to tell anyone? Is that where you want to take your life? Yes! Chase nearly barked. I want to help my city! Cyrus leaned back and gave a long sigh, trying to make sense of the puppy before him. In a way, he almost admired Chase's determination, but he feared what would be exposed to the poor dog. And yet, his mind seemed to be made up. There was truly no turning back. Fine, he submitted, reaching behind him and pulling out a piece of paper. Sign here. A pen was haphazardly tossed before Chase as the paper was slid in front of him. And before you sign, I'm giving you one last chance to go home. Chase stared at the paper for a long time before picking up the pen in his mouth and signing his name. Although holding a pen in one's mouth made writing difficult, as Chase produced on the line what resembled chicken scratch. It didn't matter. A signature was a signature. Alright. Puh! Chase spat out the pen. Do I get a shirt or something? No, Cyrus said firmly. I guess I have a lot to tell you. We'll start at the beginning. Chase nodded, sitting comfortably. For the record, Cyrus began, you are completely prohibited from telling anyone outside of the ACG of your new position. This is for your protection, he finished, watching Chase nod. The duties of CAP members are to assist the ACG and report their findings. But since you're part of the Paw Patrol division, I have a more special assignment for you. Chase nodded, listening intently. You want me to come out and say it? Cyrus braced himself. Chase, there's something loose in Adventure Bay, and before you ask, it's not a criminal. It's something different. Something more. It's what we can only label as a biological threat, a parasite of sorts. Like a disease? Chase asked. No, diseases can be cured. His eyes flicked to the side. Well, most of them. But this thing isn't a sickness. It's alive. We don't have a lot of data on what it is exactly. We just know that it's a creature, a parasitic organism of sorts. A week or so ago, he began, there was a breach in a secret research facility. We're not paid to know the exact details, but one of their experiments escaped into the wild. Cyrus reached to the folder that had been sitting on the table and opened it, revealing a bunch of papers and some Polaroid photos. Chase watched intently as Cyrus pressed his paw on one of the photos and moved it to Chase's view. Looking down, Chase tried to focus on the photo before him. It was slightly dark, possibly taken in low light, and appeared to be of a still room. He could see tables and overturned chairs, like something barreled through the room and knocked everything over. The walls were covered in either waterfalls of wires and metal coils, or plagued in grime, giving the photo a sickly, unkempt feel. Chase's eyes narrowed, focusing on one of the tables. There was a silhouette poking out of the corner, a small head, with an arm and paw sticking out as well. It was a dog, with tall ears and a narrow muzzle. It was too dark to identify any fine details, but the glowing pinpricks it had for eyes was clear as day. Is that a dog? Chase asked, looking up at Cyrus. No, Chase. He shook his head. Meet Feroxmalis. Who? The puppy asked, confused. Cyrus sighed, clearly growing uncomfortable with relaying the information. Feroxmalis is a unicellular organism. You know what that means, right? It means their entire body is simply one cell. Chase nodded. Cyrus continued, tapping his paw. The Feroxmalis cell possesses parasitic traits. That dog in the photo was a test subject they injected the cell into. Within minutes, Feroxmalis had completely taken over their body, taking control of their mind. You can't see it in the photo, but its skin slowly started decaying. Chase shrunk further into the chair as Cyrus leaned over the table. Chase, its skin withered away. Sure, the dog's face is mostly intact, but the body is nothing but blood, bone, and vein-covered muscles. Once the Feroxmalis parasite enters your blood, you're turned in minutes. There doesn't seem any way to fight it back yet. What? Chase squeaked. To make matters worse, Cyrus growled, the dog, whom we can now safely refer to as Feroxmalis itself, has survival as its best interest. It wants to consume. It will attack and devour anything that crosses its path. And that thing is smart, Chase. It's smart enough to know when to hide and stay in the shadows. According to the research papers we were given, it knows when to split off its main cell from the body to escape death. The old body is left to rot and decay, and Feroxmalis finds something, I don't know, a bug or a person to ride on and find its next host. Chase could barely say anything. His eyes widened and ears flattened. He barely made sense of what was being thrown at him. And when it does grow big enough, Cyrus shrugged, the host's body begins to rupture, as if losing its skin wasn't enough. It becomes a horrific predator, using tendrils to snatch anything it comes across and drag it into its body, adding to its size and biomass until it's nothing but a massive dog-shaped, gory monster looking to endlessly consume all life in the city. And now this monster is loose in Adventure Bay, Cyrus finished. We've seen the reports. Local people and dogs are suddenly vanishing. It can't be a coincidence. You're kidding, Chase quivered. This is why you're here? Cyrus nodded. This is why we're closing off the city, and why we shut down your mission on the missing woman and dog. See, Ferox Malice is smart enough to know when to hide. It'll burrow itself into your bloodstream, but not instantly take over your brain. It literally hides inside you, waiting for the right moment to emerge. In fact, one of your Paw Patrol friends could have the parasite in them right now and not even realize it. What? The shepherd recoiled, horror creeping within him as he remembered Sky's lingering illness. So here's your special assignment, Cyrus concluded. Go home and watch your friends. Take note of where they are at all times, and I do mean watch them. A sign of dormant infection could be excessive nosebleeds, hobbling, almost drunken movement, or show symptoms of fever. The mission of the ACG is to find Ferox Malice, contain it, then return the monster to the facility. So if one of your friends ends up... He stopped himself, noting the puppy's terrified expression. Look, if one of your friends ends up being the host, call me ASAP. He passed Chase what looked like a pup tag, complete with the clip to be attached to a collar. Unless they're already merged into one being, Ferox Malice can't infect multiple bodies at once. So if you see it, call us, and we'll send over everything we have. Chase looked down at the pup tag. The little piece of metal was clearly meant to be a lifeline, with the small button in the middle that would activate a homing beacon. Gulping fearfully, he reached a paw forward and took the tag. I'm sorry about our brutality. Cyrus hung his head apologetically. We're really trying to get this creature contained and out of here. So head home. Keep in mind what I said, okay? Chase nodded, barely able to contain his horrified quivering. Taking the new pup tag in his mouth, he climbed down from the chair and left the room, a near traumatized expression on his face. Cyrus watched him go, fearing for the puppy's psychological health.